Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Friend Wrap. I'm your host, Nicholas Lorimer, today joined by Marius Roodt. Let's get into the news of today. And the first story we're going to be talking about is a request from Judge President of Gauteng, Dustin Malombo, who says that it's time to stop bringing so many court cases to the Gauteng courts. He has issued a proposed change to the way that the courts work in Gauteng that will see all cases on civil matters brought to the courts requiring a mediation first to have been done before it can be judged by the courts. The news story describes the situation in Gauteng, and indeed in much of the country, as too many cases and too few judges. This wouldn't apply to cases that are supposed to be heard this year in 2025, but would apply to cases from 2026 onwards. The earliest court dates available for civil matters at the moment in Gauteng is 2031, which is absolutely crazy. Imagine if you have, sort of relatively minor legal dispute and you have to wait until 2031 for it to be heard in the court. This directive is still a draft and it hasn't been final. So it looks like they're sort of asking for more comment on it. And it's received a bit of a mixed reaction from lawyers. So some have pointed out that approximately 85% of civil cases that come to court get settled on the first morning of the court, which the judge president obviously believes could be settled by mediation beforehand, or at least most of those could be settled by mediation. Some lawyers said that this was long overdue and it was necessary to ensure that the court's times were not wasted with frivolous matters. Others said that this was going to deprive some litigants of their constitutional rights to access courts by forcing them into mediation, adding an extra step and cost in time and money to accessing legal services and resolving disputes. But Marius, this just seems to be another story of kind of the larger misgovernance. The government always has lots of money to be spent on inflated tender prices, on BE contracts, on community liaison officers, but apparently not on judges. What's your take on this story?
Yeah, it's obviously. I think you got it right there. It's shows you broader misgovernance issues. And as the saying goes, justice delayed is justice denied. And as you say, if somebody has an issue now and they've got to wait till 2031 to get it sorted out, I mean, that can, for argument's sake, somebody say like two people are arguing over some contract over business or something. Now you'd be stuck in limbo for 6 years. Say there's like whatever R1 million tied up in this contract or something, and you'd be stuck in limbo for 6 years till you get this sorted out. So I mean, this is probably not a bad idea if it's going to clear the court files and so on, but it's obviously not what you should be doing. It's kind of we get the outsurance pointsman in Gauteng at where there's broken robots and so on. And sure, it's a way of getting traffic moving, but we shouldn't have to have those guys doing it. It's a solution, but they shouldn't be doing it. The traffic lights should be working. And the same kind of thing, yeah. This is one way of clearing the court files, but that's not what should be happening. Court should be efficient. They should be working quickly. There should be enough judges to hear cases and so on. But but maybe the silver lining is that people will go to mediation first, and case they would have gone to court before will now actually get cleared up, and people will actually be able to get some resolution beforehand. So but it's not great, and it's all part of the as you say, the broader misgovernance in the country, I think.
And of course, while this reporting here doesn't talk specifically about this, we know that there have been many instances where courts have occasionally had to suspend work because facilities are not working properly, because the power is out, because there's no water in the building, those kind of sort of more basic municipal problems. And that has an effect, because then every single case gets kicked over and it has to be rescheduled, and it just causes complete chaos for the entire system. And the consequence, as you say, this can actually, in the sort of day-to-day small details of people's lives, this can be kind of life-ruining. If you're a small or medium business and you're in this, dispute, and you have a civil case that needs to be resolved, and you're pretty sure you can win, you can be waiting in a kind of legal limbo for years. And it can completely destroy your life, your opportunities to grow your business, your opportunities to flourish. So this sort of stuff needs to be taken very seriously, and that means reprioritizing attention and funds away from waste, of which there is a lot, to important things like having enough judges and having working courts. Having the water on in the courts would also be a good first step.
And I think that's one of the things. You hear stories of people who, like, people trying to wind up estates, and not very complicated estates. People with, not huge amounts of money in terms of assets and what have you. But because the courts are working so poorly, these also just block up the court file. And also, if you're waiting for an estate to get sorted out, say one of your parents died or whatever the case is, you're also stuck in limbo. And it's just these things. It's got real consequences for people's lives, and that's one thing we must always remember, is that misgovernance has actual consequences for real people, where there's people not having jobs, or this kind of thing where as you're pointing out, or, as example, like your small business, you're stuck in some kind of legal dispute, you can't do anything for 5 years. So real people get harmed by misgovernance.
Exactly. I have a friend who actually has a complex estate problem, and it's been absorbed literally years of his life at this point. And it has no sign of being resolved anytime particularly soon. And that's exactly because, in part, the courts are so slow. Okay, let's move on to our next story. And this is news on the budget. So the ANC proposed a while ago the budget that they included a VAT increase and also an income tax increase through sort of income tax bracket creep. And it looks like the ANC still can't scrape together the votes to pass this budget. It hasn't come up for a vote yet, but so far it's clear that they're asking various political parties, and one of the reasons we know this is that they recently held a meeting with Action SA to ask them if they could get Action SA 6 MPs to support the budget. This, to me, indicates that they are not anywhere close to securing the EFF, DA, or MK as voting partners, if they're having to also ask Action SA. But Action SA said that they met with them, and they put out a statement from the chairperson, Michael Beaumont, and the parliamentary leader, Athol Trollip, saying, "We had a cordial meeting between the two parties on Friday, during which Action SA made itself available to listen to the ANC's proposals in a manner consistent with its position as a constructive opposition party. But ultimately, they ended up rejecting supporting the budget, saying they would not vote for these tax increases, and saying that the budget needs to be passed by the GNU or by a new government, and the GNU should fold. Marius, what do you make of this? I mean, it looks to me like the ANC is continuing to sort of flail around without a plan on the budget. It's not any closer to passing it seems to me, than it was a week or two ago.
I think, in theory, the GNU without the DA has exactly 200 seats in Parliament. So, in theory, if they could get all the GNU partners to vote with the ANC, they could. I suppose you need 201 votes though to pass a budget. So,
Right.
200. They'd have to get some other tiny party to support them. But I mean, I would imagine. I'd be quite surprised if parties like the Freedom Front Plus or whatever is supporting the VAT increase. But yeah, it just shows that I think that's exactly it. The ANC doesn't have a plan. Yeah, they still haven't got used to the fact that they aren't the sole party in government. They have to govern with other political parties. And from what, if I recall correctly, the DA did say they would support a VAT increase of 0.5 percentage points now if the ANC acceded to certain demands, changing some of the definitions in the Expropriation Act, if they agreed to a spending review. And these are all kinds of things that seem pretty sensible to me. They didn't say to the ANC, yeah, exactly. They didn't say to the ANC, you must, you guys must actually get rid of your manifesto and do everything the DA wants. There was like, well, we've given you guys quite a lot of concessions on things like Bela and the NHI and so on, and the ANC has not given one concession at all yet on anything. I honestly think that they haven't. They're still in the Nadal stage of the stages of grief or whatever. They haven't accepted that they are not this massive hegemon in South African politics anymore. They've got to listen to other political parties, and nobody's saying that the ANC must do exactly what the DA wants. But I think the DA has actually been pretty fair in how they've probably actually. I mean, a lot of people would say they've probably been a bit maybe a bit limp-wristed in some things with the GNU, but I think this was the right hill for the DA to actually push back on. I think the DA would have lost a lot of credibility if they supported this VAT increase without any kind of demands, or what has been happening now where they said they won't support it. But they've also put the EFF and MK in quite a tough position because the EFF and MK both all said they won't support a VAT increase, and if they backtrack on that, it'd be, I think, lose a lot of credibility for both those parties. So I think what it comes down to is the ANC's just actually got to realize that they're not the sole governing party in South Africa anymore, and they've got to do some of the things that the DA has asked them to do. And I think that's what they've got to realize. But this is also, I think this is all pretty positive actually for South Africa. South African politics has entered a real stage now. Before, our politics was always fake in a way because the ANC, they dominated everything. Now we're in a different place now. This is how politics works in the rest of the world, especially in proportional representation. Countries like South Africa is, there's not one party that dominates. The various interests pulling and pushing, and that's better for a country overall. I think it's never healthy for one party to dominate as long as the ANC did.
Oh, I agree with that completely. All right, and now for our final item, not one that's particularly important, but I think it's still worth talking about. Now, many people may not have heard the name Maharaj for a long time. He retired in 2015 as Zuma's spokesperson, I believe. So it's been 10 years now since he was out there leading the charge in defense of Zuma on every single issue you could imagine. He was sort of almost Zuma's foremost defender in the media, fighting with journalists all the time, talking about how great Zuma was or how unfairly he was being treated. But now he seems to have changed his mind. He says in an interview, quote, "I think his administration is one of the biggest disasters that the country went through and that it is still in the process of grappling with. How to overcome these disasters, the extent to which the state was stripped of its capacity. And I think his breakaway does not bode well and does spell out a commitment that we made as the ANC." He was also asked about his time defending Zuma as Zuma spokesperson, and he said, "Those remarks about the Zuma years, I stand by them." So he's admitting he was wrong, but also not admitting he was wrong. And I don't know, Marius, it's just, I feel like, people who are not really apologizing should probably be held accountable for things they've done. What is your take on the story?
Yeah, I mean, it's just massive gaslighting. Like I said, he was basically Zuma's attack dog for a lot of the Zuma presidency. And, it's not like Jacob Zuma came and he was like this squeaky clean guy who everybody thought, he's going to be a technocrat and he's going to put the right people in place. When he was on his way to becoming president, I mean, in the mid-2000s, I mean, he was fired by Thabo Mbeki for corruption in 2005 as deputy president of South Africa. We had that awful rape case with Kwesi and whatever. And, like, of course, Jacob Zuma was found not guilty, so we can't say he is a rapist, but something very fishy happened that night. And you can also, I mean, that woman was a lot younger than Jacob Zuma, I think about 30 years younger than him or something. And I mean, that's even from that's all a bit weird. You don't want to really get into it, but yeah, it's all a bit strange, I think. And we know Jacob Zuma, there's lots of other allegations around him. And as I say, Thabo Mbeki fired him for pretty clear allegations of corruption. So we knew he wasn't like this squeaky clean guy who was going to clean up South Africa. We knew what kind of person Jacob Zuma was. And people like Maharaj supported him, were in his administration. And this is all, it's gaslighting, and it's trying to memory hole what's happened. It's kind of the same as what's happened in the US, where a lot of people who said all these allegations about Joe Biden having dementia basically was, it's all nonsense, and then 6 months later they say, actually Joe Biden should never have stood as president again. Or same here in South Africa, you won't find anybody who actually voted for the Nats in the 1980s, the 1970s. I'm sure in the 1950s in Germany we would have struggled to find anybody who supported the Nazis and Adolf Hitler. And I mean, at least Maharaj, he's speaking out both sides of his mouth, saying he stands by everything, but also was a terrible time for South Africa. So I mean, you've got to give him kudos for that, I suppose. But yeah, it's
yeah, look, it's one thing to say, I made some mistakes. I didn't contribute positively, but now I see the truth or whatever. That's one thing. And that's something I think that there should be more acceptance of in public life. It's another thing to just not really admit that you made any mistakes and then kind of completely change your tune, do the complete 180. That's just utter madness. Anyway, that's all the time we have for today. We hope you found the show interesting, and we'll be back tomorrow on The Daily Friend Show. That's a wrap. The Daily Friend Show and The Daily Friend are a project of the Institute of Race Relations, the IRR. The IRR is a think tank which was founded in 1929 to study race relations in South Africa and works to change government policy to improve race relations through non-racialism and to ensure the prosperity of all South Africans. If you like our work and would like to support us, please go to irr.org.za and click Support the IRR, or you can go to thedailyfriend.co.za